Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming to the stage one of my favorite people in e-commerce, Robyn Johnson.
I got it, yeah. Come on, sit down, stay a while. We're gonna be drinking later, you should rest your feet. I promise I won't be boring. I promise you can at least make fun of me later if I was boring. I'm looking at you and you. All right, so. Oh, all right. So, I am really excited about sharing today about what you can do to implement your business, these things into your business. How many of you got a good idea that you would like to actually implement in your business? How many of you got it from somebody you networked with and not a speaker? Right? So it's not, when you come to these conferences, it isn't always the speakers that give you the best ideas. Sometimes it's the conversations that you have over a beer or a meal that really make the difference. But you come back with 1,500 ideas. So how do you actually make sure that you're actually implementing the things that you haven't had in mind that you wanted to do? Because when you think about it, how many of you had extra time before you got here? All right, so most of you don't have a way to implement all of these things right away. So is it okay if I share with you some ways to not only increase your profitability, but increase the amount of time you have to implement these new ideas? Yes? Okay. So there was a pottery teacher, that he decided to do something different for his class. And so he split the class into two. And for the final, one group would be graded only on the quantity. How many pots did they make? And the other ones would be graded only on the quality. So for the quality people, they had to make sure that their vases, they had just the one really great vase, right? For the quantity, they had to just pump out as many. They were graded by the pound, right? And at the end of the year, what he found was kind of surprising. The quantity group actually had better quality vases than the quantity group. Because the quality group, they were busy theorizing about how wonderful this would be and what is the right technique, and they weren't actually doing it. Because to be a master at something, it takes practice, it takes implementation. Sometimes I see people at the conference after conference after conference, and they still haven't moved on to that next piece because they're afraid that if they don't have it perfect, they're not gonna be able to do it right, so they just don't take any action. So we have to be making sure that what we're doing in our business is giving us the experience we need to actually grow in our business. Now, if you don't know about me, I have got to speak in all sorts of cool places. I've got to publish and blog in a lot of really cool places, but I love coming to places like this. For those of you who don't know me, I'm not gonna tell you my long story. I'm sure like 10 other people here could tell you it. Basically, I started with $100. I built it into a 7-figure business in just 3 to 4 years. And what I've learned since then, from coaching, from working with some of the best sellers in the industry, from being able to have the privilege of coaching some of the smartest people that I know, those are the things that I'm going to share with you today. Because it's not just enough to have a business that grosses a lot of money. What matters is, are you getting the results that you wanted, that you started this business for in the first place? You started your business to be home with your kids, but now you can't sit down and play a game of cards with them because you have to get that shipment out every week. What's the point? You wanted to travel, or you wanted to be able to retire early, and you find yourself working more hours for less pay? That does not get us where we want to go. I have a lot of programs we work people through, but I'm not here to sell you anything today. Today, I want to focus on how can we help you grow your business. So I'm going to be sharing a couple of things that I've seen that will really are some of the biggest hurdles that our entrepreneurs face, some of the actionable things that you should be focused on and not be focused on, and helping you to build some accountability for yourself so that you can actually implement these things. Now, we've seen some amazing speakers here, and as you've been watching these, or you might have looked at Garland, or you might have talked to Jamie and Larissa, you might have talked to Chris Potter, and in your mind, their business might have looked a little bit like this. You might think this is how they feel in their business. Brand restrictions are coming! No! yeah? You've got an IP complaint? I control everything in Amazon. Or you might have been talking to people that were really young that have all these amazing businesses, and it might seem more like this.
This is all my money. I like money. It's raining 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 money. I'm covered.
But I will tell you, as being one of these people on stage, I don't always feel that way in my business. And I know a lot of other of us that other people look up to, we have this imposter syndrome because we feel more like this in our business. The more I work, sometimes I feel like I made one mistake and I'm working through it. And the further I'm working through it, the more I feel like I'm just gonna end up a little bit stuck. It's not, I'm just gonna get there. Hold on. So when we're looking in our business, we look at these other people, we think, why is it that they have so much more success? They must have something that I don't. You know, they're so young and they were able to do this. What's wrong with me? Or if you're young, you might feel like, oh man, I don't have the resources that these other people have. Or maybe you look at some of these other people and they're looking to you and you're saying, if they only knew what a hot mess I am day to day, they would not look at me the same way, right? We have all of these things, and they start to control us because for most of humanity, we spend the majority of our life doing two things: trying to look good to others and trying to avoid looking bad to others, right? So why, you might say, well, I didn't start this. I had that idea before Chris Green. I'm such a dummy, right? What it takes intentionality to learn and implement the things that you've learned here. And one of the biggest mistakes that I see people make, the things that eats their profit and stops their growth and causes them to self-sabotage their entire business, where they have something cash flow positive year after year after year, and then 2 or 3 years later, that's a sexy voice I got right there, hold on. Hey, I've got a smoky voice today. 2 or 3 years after that, they come back and they're almost bankrupt. Or their business growth has not grown, but it's shrunk. Or even worse, it's grown, they have 10 employees, they're working 80 hours a week, and their net profit at the end of the year went from 25% to 2%. That happens. The biggest thing is thinking that the grass is greener on the other side. The biggest thing that I see people do is they're working on their business. And if you want grass, you need sunlight, you need water, and you need some cow poop. You need some fertilizer, right? So just a little side note, failure in your business is like fertilizer. It stinks, but you need it to grow. So what I see people do is I'm gonna buy the best, most amazing seeds on the planet, and I'm gonna get the best spot in the sun. I'm gonna pay extra premium for this extra thing. And what they do is every 10 minutes, they dig up the seeds and try to replant new seeds. Because the one thing it doesn't matter how great your seeds are, it doesn't matter how much sun they get, if you don't give that seed time, it will not grow. So the biggest thing, if you follow Gary Vee, he'll say, patience is so underrated, right? You have to be willing to execute the idea long enough to start to see the results. So when you're able to kind of know, okay, maybe it's not just that there's something missing in me, that there's not, if people knew what was really going on in my business, maybe they could help me more. It frees you to stop jumping from gimmick to gimmick, from idea to idea, and start focusing on what really works. So if you talk to people who are really successful in this business, a lot of them, you might not have noticed, have very specific niches. They do 1, 2, or 3 things really, really well, and they started with one, they mastered it, and then they moved on to another one. That's what that allows you to do. Now you might say, well, how do you know all this? You must be really brilliant. And it's really the opposite. I have made every dumb mistake. I've taken Amazon loans and not bought items fast enough. I've not managed my cash flow. I just looked at my profit and loss being like, oh, maybe it'll be okay. I've done all the dumb mistakes. And it's from those dumb mistakes that now I'm able to help other people grow their business, right? So I'm gonna talk about 5 things that are the biggest things that stop people from being able to actually do the diversification that they want and not get the results that they want. The first thing to think about, if you've had success, and there's some incredibly successful people in this room, what got you here may not get you there. So I had a client that was doing really, really well in a certain business model. And we looked at their growth, and their net margin at the end of the bottom line was 3%. And they figured if they just grew, then that would fix the problem, right? They just needed more money. They just needed to grow. And when we actually looked more, what they needed to have their dream life was $350,000 a year. In order to get, from the $5 million seller that they are now to be able to have that net at that net margin, they would have to sell over $10 million a year. And I was like, how do you feel about that? He's like, expletive, no. Right? He's like, I don't have the money for that. I don't want to do that. That's just not possible. So we had to back up and say, you know what, doing more of what you're doing is only going to give you less time with your child. It's only going to give you more heartache and more employees to manage. It's not going to actually get you where you want to go. So we had to back up and say, now we need to work on increasing your net margin, your gross margin, and we need to work on having you decrease your expenses so you can sell the same amount and actually get the amount of money that you needed. We actually were able to develop a plan where he was, without growing, he was actually able to get to that ultimate goal. So it's not always about growth. Now, if you land in Colorado and you get your rental car, the first thing that you do is you open up a map. And a map is completely useless without a destination. So if you want to accelerate growth, first you want to make sure that you're heading in the right direction. So for somebody who's really, really great, like, if you look at the Lips, or if you look at the Gapples, I always say their name wrong, I don't know why. If you look at, so many people in this room, and you know who you are, you guys are moving at rocket fuel pace. So if you are pointed just slightly in the wrong trajectory, that's the difference between going to the moon and coming back and bye-bye, right? So we want to make sure you know where you're going. Your business should exist, you should not exist to serve your business. Your business should be there to serve you. How many of you take something every month out of your business and take it for personal? All right, who is not taking any money out? All right, so I'm gonna talk to you real quick. And for all the people that raised their hand in the back, and she's taking the hit for you, so you should thank her, buy her a beer later, all right? So when you're thinking of having kids, and people say, I'm just gonna wait until it's a good time, there is never a good time to have a parasite living inside you, to have it come out and have to focus on feeding and clothing this child for the rest of their life. There is never a good time for that. So people will say, well, when my business is really making it, then I will pull money out of my business. There will never be a moment where you're like, I'm raining money, and you're gonna be able to pull out money. So start pulling something out now. Even if it's just $50 a month and you increase it every quarter, that is something, all right? So our businesses should be there to serve us, not the other way around. So we need to monitor the health of our business, but we also need to make sure that we're building our business intentionally in a way that our business is designed to yield us a certain result. So instead of saying, I want my business to grow to be a multi-million-dollar business, we want to say, you know what, I want to be able to travel 6 months of the year. I want to be able to have my kids in parochial school. I want to do X, Y, and Z. That costs me, that house, the dog ranch in the middle of Colorado, that's going to cost me this much. So I need my business to yield this amount, right? And from there, we're going to be able to kind of see things a little clearly. So if you could wave a magic wand and go, bippity boppity boo, I think that I could be that Disney character. I think that sounds like fun. You could get whatever you wanted. How much would you be taking out of your business? This is something you should write down. How much are you taking out of your business? How many hours are you working in your business? So how much time are you doing? Because if you think that you want to spend 10 hours a week and you don't want to hire and you want to go to $3 million a year, that math doesn't add up. So you want to make sure by looking at these questions, it will make sure you're building in the right direction. Because what I see people do is they grow because, they saw somebody really cool like Harvey out there. And they're like, I want to be like Harvey. And so they grow to be like, they take the next steps following somebody else, not looking to see if that's actually the right thing for them. And I really apologize for my voice. If I could fix it, I would. But you have to bear with me, okay? So we want to make sure that we're looking at that. How many people would be working in your business? If you want to grow to 10 million and have 2 people running your business, that might require a different model than retail arbitrage. And how much do you want to have invested in your business? So how much money do you want to have tied up in this one thing? So we talk a lot about inventory rules and money rules. So it's like some of the money rules that me and my husband have is like anything over $5,000 for the business, he makes me think overnight, and he has to give me he's the balloon puncher. So I'm like, I came home and I talked to this person, I'm so excited. And he's like, did you think about this? Did you think about that? No, you didn't think about that, right? So you need to have a balloon puncher in your life. I know that they feel like they suck all the air out of the room, but they keep you from going bankrupt, which is a good quality to have. So these are good things. So you want to look at those things and then focus on bottom line growth. Because if we want to be focused on increasing profitability, I cannot tell you the number of profit and losses that I look at this time of year, every year, from people that met every goal, surpassed their goals, and they're in tears on the phone with me. Because they grew their business from 1.6 million to 3.7 million, and instead of taking home 500,000, now they took home 100,000. Because when they grew their business, they weren't looking at bottom line, they were just looking at top line. So you gotta look at your bottom line numbers. So every expense you have, and that even includes if you're paying me something, that means you have to sell that much more in order to just stay alive. Yes? Yes? So every time we hit that sign up button, you have to think, that is one last night at Bunko, right? Whatever you guys do. So I know these numbers are kind of small, but if you look at it, if you don't change your ROI as you grow, but you just increase your expenses, so you get a warehouse, but that is so small, I can barely read it. All right. Can anybody got their bifocals out? So if you don't decrease your ROI, you just increase your expenses, the amount of money that you need to spend every month will increase from $4,500 to $8,500 on top of the expenses you have. Because people just think if I have a warehouse, I could grow bigger. Yes, but on average, most people paying about $1,000 a month, depending on your ROI, you might have to sell an extra $250,000 just to pay for the warehouse. And that's not including the workers' comp, the employees, the lights. Now, if you're looking to grow from 500,000 to 6 million, then yes, it is still a good move. You're still gonna need that piece, but you need to be aware that every time you grow, that there's going to be, when you first started and you felt like you were like on a roller coaster and you wanted to cry like every other day and the money was tight and it felt like everything was falling apart, or you were the superhero of the world going to take over, you were going to be the next Trump, right? So you're going to have that every time you level up. So where you feel like things, like the cash is going to be strapped, your time is going to be strapped, you're going to have to work harder again, and that fear of failure and living down in the van by the river, that's all going to come back. All right? So you should know that. Now, if you do it, so the other thing I see people do as they're trying to grow is they lower their percentage. So what they'll do is they'll take it from, 70% to 30% ROI. So instead of $4,500, they need $10,000 a month in order to make the same money. Does that make sense? So they have to have more capital to and move a lot more items to make the same amount of money. So if you combine the two of lowering your ROI and having the increased expenses, this will be what your business looks like in about a year. We don't want that. Never let go, Jack, never let go. The other thing you need to do is ride the waves. There are product life cycles that we need to know. So in the beginning, when a product comes, that people don't know about it, it's early. These are things that are kind of only the early adopters are on, right? These are things that you should not be bringing to Amazon because it's still the brand's responsibility to make sure that those items have enough brand recognition and demand for you to be able to provide quality distribution. This is where I live for most of my products. I look for growth products in the life cycle, things that are just catching on. This is where you have high ROI and good velocity, but it doesn't last for long. You can tell that it's heading out of the growth stage when the price softens, the number of sellers increase. These are all things that you're gonna see. Things that you want to start telling your wholesalers is this is when you want to get them implementing a MAP policy. This is when you want to get really helpful in their distribution. Now, this is where I do, like Eddie and like the wholesale formula, they focus on this mature thing where there's a lot of the demand has hit them the biggest piece of their business, right? So there's already existing demand, it's gonna cause a lot of velocity. So, and most RA, for the most part, is living in that mature stage. Now, fidget spinners live here. So at some point, everything stops being cool. I used to love my trolls and my Tamagotchis. Like, there was a point where they weren't cool. Now, they're coming back now, but it's like in fashion, if you did it the first time, you're not supposed to do it the second time, right? So, when you're looking at product life cycle, the number one thing is to be watching this curve for your products, and when it's necessary, you need to get out now while you still can. Stop getting emotionally tied up to your products, and because you need to make sure that you're going and getting new leads. You will always need new leads, whether you're private label, wholesale, books, it doesn't matter. You're always gonna need those. So watch the product life cycle, learn about product life cycles. The other thing that I see people do that honestly I think sucks up the 90% of their time is managing by Jenga. So when you play Jenga and you just touch a bunch of blocks and the first one that moves, you're like, that's the one I'm gonna take out? That's how most people handle their to-do list. They're like, oh no, I have this and I have that, and they just run from one thing to another. There's no system, there's no intentionality, and so they end up doing a bunch of stuff that's not necessary, right? And then they end up kind of hiding from the things that they don't wanna do, so they're like, what do you mean I need to do my books? Woo, shiny object, I'm gonna take a course, yeah, right? So we wanna stop doing that. We wanna stop trying to hold everything in our head. There's programs like Asana, Trello, and Basecamp that will be a task management that will hold you and your team accountable. How many of you work with your spouses? All right, so here's what was happening. I'm a night owl, my husband's an early riser. So I would be in bed and I'd be like, oh, did that happen? And so I would go, honey, and he's like, it is 3 in the morning. What do you want? I was like, did you upload that flat file? He's like, really? It is 3 in the morning, you woke me up for a flat file? And then he would roll over, right? So what Asana does is it allows for me, instead of like, Brianna, that lovely lady back there, that's Brianna. That's my assistant. So if you're in the academy, she's the one that answers your emails and is really polite and awesome, right? So if I want to know if Brianna did something, I don't want to have to call her in the middle of the night and see if it's done. With Asana, I can see if it's done because it's checked off. So here's some examples. If you're in the academy, if you're in Momentum, where you just bought an event ticket, we can actually put these exact templates right into your Asana for you. This is the management and CEO task. So we put all of the things that we saw needs to happen on a regular basis, like paying your credit card bills, reconciling shipments, all of those pieces that need to happen, right? So you put them in Asana. With Asana, you can set up reoccurring tasks. So every month it'll say, hey, you need to get your reimbursements done. Hey, don't forget to reorder this company. Hey, we should pay that credit card bill, right? So, and then you can also check and see when it's done, so you don't have to constantly be going back and saying, well, did I do that? What we find for our high-end clients, for companies that are doing over $1 million, is that the CEO's time that they spend doing these tasks drops by 40 to 70%. Because they usually are running from fire to fire, and by the time it's a fire, now it's a lot more work, right? So it allows you to be proactive in your business. So on this one, it's basically just managing the tasks and checking them off. So in the tasks, you can actually break out subtasks, so you can make sure you got all the credit cards, right? And you can set, the Amex on this day and this on Capital One on this day. The other thing we use it for is, we use it as like a cheap contact CRM, right? So for wholesale, what we'll do is once they're a qualified lead, we'll put them in Asana, and see how there's those columns there? You can actually drag it from column to column. So we're able to see exactly where the leads are in the funnel. This is also, you can do something exactly the same for private label and also for your merch shirts. So this would be like, for merch shirts, the first column would be ideas. For the second column, it would be design submitted. For the ones, it would be approved, and then checking the creating a listing. So you'd move it from piece to piece, yes? So this is a really powerful tool because it allows your entire team to know exactly where every project is without having to go and look them up. The other thing we use this for a shipping board. So that's when we're doing RA, like you would say, this store, that we bought on March 18th, when it comes into the shipping, then we would put it in the board, and then we would drag it through the system as it was moving. And we could also put notes in there. So, like when your warehouse person goes like, why did you buy this? Because it's not profitable on this universe or any other universe. They can put those notes in there and tag you so you can be like, oh, I was gonna put it in a bundle, but I forgot to tell you about it, right? So if you can start managing proactively, you will spend a lot less time running from trying to do this to trying to do that, and you'll actually be able to move forward. And all those moments where you're like, forgot that? You can start breathing like a normal person again, and your friends are not gonna worry that you have some sort of weird gasping disease. So, it allows you to be able to be intentional in the way that you do things and to make sure that things that are not getting missed. So number 4 is we want to make sure that success is predictable. So there's a great book called The 4 Disciplines of Execution. You start reading, you're like, Robyn was dumb. This book's for big teams. I'm not a big team. She was dumb. I'm not dumb, and I'm gonna tell you why. These things work even if you're a solopreneur. So they talk about lead versus lag goals. So I had a client, she would get super excited. She's like, you know what? This is the year. I'm gonna make it. I'm gonna work extra. So she would work really, really hard this week. And then this week, she would look at her sales and she'd be like, I worked so hard and my sales aren't up. Her shipment hadn't got to Amazon yet, right? So then she wouldn't work for a week, and then she would be like, oh, my Amazon business is working. And then she would work really hard, and then we'd get here, and now we're selling the things that were the week that she wasn't buying, right? She's like, oh, but now it's broke and it's not working. Well, and this time I'm gonna get really serious. And she did this for years and years and years, right? And so what we're looking at is that she was only looking at the lag goals. So when you're playing like Little League, the kid scores the goal, but it takes the time for the dad to put down the beer and flip over the sign, right? The lag is that from the time the goal happens to the time it shows up on the scoreboard. So you do the work, but if you're retail arbitrage, which is pretty instant gratification, right? You do the work here, it doesn't show up on the scoreboard for 2 to 4 weeks. So if you live and die by your sales numbers, you're gonna be schizophrenic. Because you're gonna be like, I'm the best of times and the worst of times, all the time. You're just gonna be freaking out. So we wanna look at lead versus lag. So the lead measures are the things that make those lag goals predictable. And so if we do these things, it's going to help you make sure that you're getting those lag results. The lag results are still important because it makes sure that the things that you think will move the needle in your business are actually moving the needle, okay? So, for example, some of the things that the lag measures that you should be looking at in your business, you should be looking at gross sales. I think everybody's got that checked off. We all got 1 point, right? The other thing we should be looking at is inventory aged over 90 days. So you should be looking at anything that you bought that you sent into Amazon, unless you did it intentionally. Anything that's over there, if you bought things thinking they would sell in 30 days and they're at 90 days, can we all admit that was a mistake? Yes? I either bought too high, I bought too saturated, I bought too many. Because they're still here after 90 days and they were supposed, like these are the relatives that have stayed a couple days too long. It is now time to get rid of them. So inventory age, and if you don't do this, there's only some minor consequences like those giant fees that are coming that are going to be happening on a regular basis. So if you're not managing your inventory age over 90 days, that is something I would put at the top of your list. So the most important things I think you should be doing in your business is 1, reordering things that are selling consistently and profitably. That should be the first thing before anything else. finding new leads, and then managing that stale inventory. Now, the lead measures are going to be predictable and influenceable. So you can't, so like the quarterback can have their goal can be to make a goal, right? To make a touchdown. But they can't help it if, if that team is really good, or if the person that was supposed to support them fell down. All they can do is say, my goal is every time I get the ball to run a certain amount of distance, right? So for RA people, that's gonna be, I know that if I spend at least 12 hours scanning in stores, then I know I can get this result. And by the way, RA people, a really great measure that I think is good to add into your mix is how much money are you spending per hour in each store? So if you are only buying with what your rule is, because I see people who are like, I love this store, and I'm like, well, you spent 4 hours there, and you spent $100, and over here you spent 2 hours, and you spent $12,000. Personally, I think you should shop more over here, right? So measuring how much you spend per hour and say, okay, I'm gonna spend at least 5 hours a week. You should really be spending more than 5 hours. I'm gonna spend 5 hours a week sourcing, following my buy rules, and my goal is to spend at least $250 per hour, right? That's what I would do when I was doing a lot of RA heavily. So it's things that you have to have direct influence over and are predictive of the goal. Same thing for your warehouse people, all right? So the other thing that we're gonna look at is, so said another way, you should prioritize your tasks by things that bring money in, things that keep your money from leaking out. That would be inventory age, reconciliation, reimbursements, those things, which are not fun. And if you know you're not going to do it, can we have a come to Jesus moment? All right, it's not Sunday yet. If you haven't done your reimbursements in the last 6 months, the likelihood of you doing them this month is not very good. So you either need to hire somebody who will do it for you, or you need to hire somebody else to do it for you. All right, so who's going to hire somebody or hire a service within the next 90 days to help them handle the thing that they know that they have been avoiding? That can be a bookkeeper, right? It can be reimbursement. It can be any of those things. And by the way, the thing that you might be counting as work time that is not work, Facebook don't count. That is like a lawyer watching Law and Order. It is work-flavored entertainment, all right? Knowing who is getting roasted and sourcing simplifiers is not going to make your business any better. So, everybody likes to watch a little Days of Our Lives, a little Grey's Anatomy. And we all know the groups that are the Days of Our Lives and the Grey's Anatomy, right? But that does not count as working your business, all right? Unless you run a paid Facebook group. So exceptions to that would be people in here who actually have a paid Facebook group. All right, the other thing is you need to embrace failure. I had one client that was working on wholesale, and she was like, every week, I was like, so how did those calls go to you? Well, so I didn't do that, but I did do something else. And so what we did is we shifted her goal from making 20 calls to getting turned down 20 times. And she actually did it. Because that goal was something she knew she could accomplish, right? She's like, it opened up a whole new world for her. She's like, I'm just gonna fail everywhere. Can I tell you, she got 4 new wholesale accounts in the first 2 weeks? Not open, anybody with a pulse can open an account. I mean, she placed an order, right? So sometimes you might need to do that. Angela Duckworth, who wrote Grit, if you haven't read the book Grit, really great book. And before I forget, if you're over $1 million in sales, you need to read Rocket Fuel. So if you're over $1 million in sales, read Rocket Fuel. So Angela said, nobody wants to show you the hours and hours of becoming. They rather show you the highlight of what they've become. A lot of times we come up to these conferences, we see these people, you're seeing the highlight reel. You're seeing me up here talking and making jokes. You're not seeing me on the day that I was so stressed out in the warehouse, I actually laid on the floor and cried in front of my employees, right? I was like, I just need a minute, right? They're not seeing the day that you thought your account was suspended because Amazon mistitled an email, and you had panic, your life was flashing in front of your eyes as you were trying to picture telling your wife that this had happened, right?
2 days ago.
I'm with you in spirit, bro. So what do Spelling Bee champs and West Point graduates have in common? So Angela was looking at West Point graduates. Like, these are people who spent years trying to get in, you know, because you have to like apply by the time you're a junior. You have to do all these things. They spend years of their life focused on just getting into West Point. There's a 7-week program before you get into West Point that helps them get ready, right? And the failure rate, people who had spent years focused on West Point, was ridiculous. Now, they had aptitude tests, they had physical fitness tests, but none of them accurately predicted who would make it and who would not. And so she started to go in there and did a study on what made people stay and what did not make people stay. The one predictor, you guys ready for the one predictor? Was grit. So she actually has a scale. So if you search for Angela Duckworth grit, then you can actually see how gritty you are. And hopefully you're also like not gritty and like I haven't taken a shower, but like just grit and persistence, right? So how persistent are you? How willing are you to stick through things? So your level of grit helps you be more successful. The nice thing about grit, unlike talent, is that you can be grittier, just like if you don't shower, right? So you can get grittier and that will help you grow your business. So that was the one thing. And she was looking at how do you, the next question people asked as the study was released was, how can I make my kids grittier? And the answer was, when in teaching kids about the brain and how things work, when the way that the chemistry and the wiring of our brains is set up, so when it comes into challenges, it creates new connections, it grows. It helped them to realize something really, really important, and something very important for us all to realize as entrepreneurs. And that's failure is not a permanent condition. Failure is not a permanent condition. So if today or next week you feel like a failure, all there is to do is to start over. It's about getting up. I will tell you, in the last year, there have been multiple times where I've had to phone a friend, doing the ugly cry, be like, I just want to quit and work at Burger King like a normal person. And I know I wouldn't be happy doing that, right? But all the pressure, all of the wanting to make it work for your employees and for you and for the people in your life, it wears on you. And so it's about continuing to get up over and over again. Some of you have heard this story, so I'm going to say it fast. But I was on the phone with my mentor, and this is a woman who is amazing. She brought talking books to the bookstores. She co-wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad. She's part of the Presidential Council for Financial Literacy. So like in terms of successful people, you can't really get better than that, right? And so I was really stressed out because I was doing something and I was like, this is gonna make me a millionaire. It did not. It was a really bad decision. It cost me about $25,000, right? And so I was like, when does it stop being so scary, right? And she laughed and I was like, look, you don't need to laugh at me, right? But she laughed at me and she said, it never gets easier. You're always gonna be afraid. You're always gonna worry if it's not gonna work out and if everything was for nothing. And hearing her say that as the pinnacle of success, I almost died a little inside because I was like, there's no hope for me then, right? But then once I had a chance to grieve that, then I was able to realize that being afraid doesn't mean that there's something wrong in your business. Being afraid just means you're afraid. And courage is not the absence of fear, but it's the willingness to feel the fear and do it anyway. So that means knowing your numbers enough to be able to say, so when I panic, I look at my numbers first to make sure I'm not, like, if your numbers are really bad, then okay, we should panic, we should have a couple calls, right? But if your numbers are good, I notice for me personally, when I'm about ready to have a really big success, I feel like my business is falling apart because I feel like I'm losing control, right? So you might have something similar. So these are some things to think about. Now, you want to stop resisting failure. It takes a lot of strikes. And just like that pottery class, the more you go out and do things, the more experience you're going to have. As we've continued that conversation with my mentor, right? She said, okay, let's say you fail. And all this time that you sacrificed from your kids was a waste of time. And you have no money to show for it. You had to file bankruptcy. You live in a van down by a river. right? I had another coach because every week I was like, I'm gonna live in a van down by a river. She's like, all right, I want you to stop that. She's like, let's face it, if you ended up in a van by a river, you'd find ways to sell like used Kleenex to somebody on the side of the street, and you would at least have a nice van down by the river. So when we were talking about that, she said, no, who built the business that you have now? And I was like, oh, I did, right? Because I'm still doing the ugly cry. For guys that do guys ugly cry? I don't know, I've never seen a guy ugly cry. But maybe tonight I will. So, you know, so as we're working through the talking about it, I was like, well, I built this business. And she said, now tell me, do you know more about business now or when you started? I was like, well, I know so much more now. She's like, you never really fail in business because every failure, every business enterprise that you have gives you more knowledge so the next time you don't make those same mistakes. So you never go back to zero. So stop being afraid of that. It's not gonna happen, it's not possible. All right? So, all right. So, was that helpful at all? All right. Like I said, I'm not here to sell anybody on anything today. No. But, truth in marketing, right? But I do really love this conference. And can we give a hand to Travis and Paul for this conference? I want more people to realize, you know, this is I love the conference, networking at this conference. It's got a completely different feel than everyone else, right? And then I love the content, they really push us to kind of bring good content, right? So if you do a couple of things, you post, not in the Rocky Mountain Reseller Conference, because that's all people who came here, not in that Facebook group, but if you post on your public Facebook page or on Twitter, something that you learned. You don't have to say the conference was the best conference ever. No incentivized reviews, right? You can just say, you know, I had a chance to talk to Dong and he was amazing. Thanks, dude, for helping me out with that thing I asked you about. Right? Yeah, Cobra Kai. For those of you watching a video, he's like wearing a costume, so you won't get the joke, but it was funny. So, you know, or, you know, like I never had a chance to talk to Eddie before, and he really opened my eyes on something I had to see. Or I learned one thing about wholesale that I think will really help me this week. And then to put hashtag RMRC 18, all right? If you do that, I'm gonna give you, because the things that I heard, or people having trouble with cash flow, right? So I'll give you, we have if you haven't read the book Profit First, it's a great book. So this is how to manage cash if you're not an accounting person. If you're an accounting person or a CPA, don't do Profit First, it'll make you crazy. But Profit First is, if I had Profit First, I have a feeling that my net worth would probably, if I had it when I started, my net worth today would be triple to 4 times what it is right now. So it's really, really powerful. If you do nothing else, just setting aside your inventory money from your business expenses will change the stress level in your life like 87 points. So I'll give you the free Profit First thing. I'm gonna give you a cash flow template if you don't like that. Our IP mini course, because some people were saying they were having trouble like responding to IP complaints. So we have a course on that. I'll give you that. An Amazon SEO, because people were asking about listing. I'll give you a webinar on that. Some basic PPC, these slides, and 2 live Q&A calls that I will stay on as long as you need, asking any questions that you need to help you implement what you want to do in your business. Is that a fair trade? Okay. Now, some of you are going to look at the page and be like, I don't have to post because there's no way to. So Brianna will be posting, and she's way more attentive to details than I am. So she will not let you get away with it, right? So you post. And if you post right now, that's how you get our drink tickets. Boom. So Joe, hey, raise your hand to Joe. So Joe gave me an Uber ride 2 weeks ago, and now he works for me. So he's our newest intern. He's amazing. I loved him so much, I was like, I need to bring you here to absorb the Amazonness. So you can come to both of them. You show them the post. And then you go to bestfromthenest.com/RMRC, and you put your email in, and we're not going to send it to you all now because are going to have so much email when you get back home, you're not going to see it, right? So we're going to wait a couple days until you get back. You've had a chance to sober up, and and then we'll start sending them to you in bite-sized pieces so you don't have to get overwhelmed, okay? So I want to thank you so much for coming to the conference, for investing in yourself, and thank you so much for giving your time and attention. I know it's really valuable.
Right. Thank you, Robyn. Robyn Johnson, everybody. She's awesome, right? She did a great job. All right.